Be honest with me. Are we at the point in the relationship where you can tell what games are on the list based on which holes are on my shelf? Let me know in the comments down below. Welcome and welcome back, everybody. Tia here, and in today's video we have a very festive theme, which is our top 10 spooky games. These are games that are excellent for the Halloween season. I always pull these games out every October because they are just such a hoot and give you all the spooks and spoos and chills and woos that you need to get into the Halloween spirit. So if you enjoyed this video, please do feel free to give it a thumbs up. After watching, it helps the video get out to a wider audience. So without further ado, let's get started. Game number 10 on this list is one that has one of my all-time favorite aesthetics in board gaming, and that is Barker's Row. This is the game where you're going to be putting together a spooky carnival filled with oddities, horrors, beasts, and all sorts of variety of attractions in order to shock and thrill your audience. The game relies on some pretty straightforward set collection mechanisms, and you'll be able to get attractions which will give you unique benefits throughout the game in order to score as many attractions as quickly as possible and fill your stands with your rubles. In terms of the depth of gameplay, in terms of the mechanics, I'll be honest, there's nothing amazingly unique here. This is not a chunky, heavy game. This is a light family weight style game, but the overall package of how it comes together is just perfect for this holiday season. And I will say without hesitation, this game has my absolute favorite meatballs that I've ever seen in any game ever. They're just so unique, and each little ruble that you have to fill your stands is unique. They could have made them all the same or made like 3 different kinds and printed them over and over again, but the attention to detail in terms of the packaging and art and execution here is just flawless. So if you're looking for a game that gives you all of the spooks and thrills and excitement of the Halloween season, be sure to check out Barker's Row. So y'all have probably heard of Leader Games, but I'm pretty sure you haven't heard of Trick or Treat, which is a Leader Games publication. Trick or Treat is a set collection game where you're going to be traveling around to different houses and locales in your neighborhood, collecting candy and avoiding those nasty bullies. This game really brings together all of the elements of a traditional Halloween trick-or-treating experience, and it seems like it would be gimmicky or silly, and it is cute. It's very lighthearted, but the set collection elements are actually really fun, and thinking about when you want to go back and dump all your candy out so that you can have a fresh bag to go back and get more, like, it really does a good job of giving you an immersive feel. And, you know, as an adult, if it were socially acceptable, would I still be physically going out and trick-or-treating? Yes. However, I've heard that it's not. So my number one replacement for that, so that I can relive that experience vicariously, is in playing Trick or Treat. And it's one that I play every Halloween for the past, I don't even know how many years since I've acquired it. It is Halloween night. There's nothing more to say there. And the mechanics, like I said, and the theme artwork are very charming and very appropriate for a Halloween night game. The next game on this list is a little bit chunkier, but it is a really great way to get into the holiday spooky spirit, and that is Dead Man's Cabal. In this game, you are going to be collecting different skulls and ruins, which will help you perform rituals in order to bring back the dead for your big Halloween party bash. One thing that I love about this game is there are a lot of little mini puzzles that you have to put together. There's the main skull track where skulls will slide down and dictate your public action for the round. You'll also be able to use the skulls that you acquire from various areas in order to choose your private action. These skulls will also be placed into a patternized grid in order to resurrect your different guest members. There's a ruins area, there's some area control for endgame scoring. It's just like a lot of little juicy fun things. It's like being at a party and going from booth to booth to booth, going apple bobbing, going to like the punch bowl, going over to, I don't know. Cool kids, what do you do at Halloween parties? I've only seen it on TV, but I would imagine that this is very similar to that, where you can go and like play this little game, play that little game, do this little thing over here. And all of these little puzzles and elements come together really nicely to create a very fulfilling mechanical gameplay experience as well. So if you're into little unique puzzles, if you really like the theme and the idea of resurrecting your guests so that you have people to party with, be sure to check out Dead Man's Cabal. Next up on the list is a solo game with a very dark and spooky theme, and this is Arkham Noir. In the Arkham Noir series, you are going to be going through and laying out a grid of cards, which you will then be using to match various symbols in order to solve the case before time runs out or before you go insane. Cthulhu-themed games, Lovecraftian horror, not necessarily my go-to, and it is, I realize, a bit overdone in the board gaming world, but of all those games, Arkham Noir, this series, definitely, in my opinion, does it the best, or in the way that's most conducive to my sensibilities. I love the overall aesthetic of using mostly black and gray with maybe little pops of color, as you can see here, and each new case adds a new element that you can piece together. One of the things I love about Case 2 is that you have these locks and these key cards that you have to get in certain orders that you can pair up together to get really extreme actions. Like, there's a lot going on here. And I love the fact that they use the cards to build the board or the grid. And there are a lot of little rules you have to keep track of, which is one thing that initially turned me off from these games. But the reference materials are so well put together that it's never difficult to know what to do next. It's very logical. Do this, then this, then this. It directs you down here, then you do this. So if you're into card games, if you are into little solo puzzles and you're looking for something spooky to cuddle up with on a dark October night, then you can definitely be sure to check out Arkham Noir. The next game on this list is another solo card game that really sets the tone for a dark, mysterious night, and that is The Brambles. This is one of the most deliciously seductive games that I own. In The Brambles, you are going to be collecting different sets of cards that you will then turn in to defeat these Bramble curse cards. And you are trying to do so before the deck runs out and the curse of the Brambles overtakes the town. This game plays off of so many familiar elements of set collection, like poker hands, gin, rummy, what have you, but with just an overall amazing theme. The flow of the game works really nicely. For me personally, there's just something about solo games or games that are just comprised of cards and nothing else. Yes, I love dice. Yes, I love meeples. Yes, I love all these little things. But when a game is just purely cards, the shuffling, the tactile efforts, the like ASMR sensory of feeling like hearing the cards when you draw them and place them down, like, I don't know what it is. It's a mesmerizing experience. And I think that The Brambles as a card game, along with the arts and the mechanics, just flows so nicely. It's a game that's really honestly entrancing, and this is one that throughout any time of the year, but especially during spooky season, I can see myself just sitting down with at night, putting on some like background music, lighting some candles, and just having like an all-out immersive experience. So if that sounds good to you, be sure to check out The Brambles by designer John Burton. Next up on the list is one of my go-to staples for Halloween gaming activities, and that is 3 Cheers for Master. This game is so freaking cute. The flavor of the game is that you are minions trying to appease your Dark Lord that has had a terrible day. And what better way to do so than creating a pyramid of cheerleading minions? However, these little monsters do not always get along well. So at certain points throughout the game, a brawl will happen, and certain monsters will attack others based on their positions in your grid. This is a really cool game. I'm not a huge fan of take that games, but the way this one plays, like, weirdly, it's got a little bit of Neuroshima Hex vibes. You're placing your cards out onto the grid or onto your opponent's grids, and when those fights come up, then it triggers a series of different events of who's attacking who, which monsters fall out. Some of the monsters are heavy, so if they fall down due to gravity, they squash the monsters underneath of them. It's just such a cool little puzzle game, and the take that elements, again, aren't necessarily too overbearing because it's not like you play a card and there's nothing they can do. You have to wait until those battles trigger in order to see what the end result will be. Maybe you can mitigate something somebody has done to you before that card comes up. Overall, it's such a whimsical, fun time. The little monsters are all unique, and the mechanics of what they do on the cards really fits the theme of each of the little creatures. Just overall, it's a really fun game. It plays up to 6. It's a quick, easy one to get to the table, and it really encapsulates the overall feel of Halloween and the spooky season. So that is Atlas Games' 3 Cheers for Masters. Coming in at number 3 is a game that really, I feel, has flown under the radar, and maybe that's due to the publication, but that is Japan-made games Demon Worker. Demon Worker is a game where you're going to be drafting a hand of workers that you will then be sending out into the field to collect different resources and people to feed to your various different demons. This is a really cool worker placement game where each card represents the worker that you send out, and they have different abilities. You are trying to get to certain places and block your opponents out, because as more people go to a particular location, it will become more and more expensive. I also really love that at the end of the game, in order to score points for your various workers that you have to be able to pay their activation cost again. So basically like an upkeep, but it only happens at the very end of the game. It's a really unique way of doing it, and I love the fact that you get to draft your workers at the beginning and then use those throughout the game. This is a really compact game. It's very unique in terms of worker placement with that drafting element and how the pieces come together. And I would say if there's only one thing that I wish was different, it's a 3 to 4 player game, but I am glad that they didn't just shoehorn in 2-player variant with a dummy player or 1-player thing. Like, you could do that if you want, but I'm glad that they kept it real with the, no, you should really be playing this with 3 or 4 players. So anytime I have the opportunity to, at that player count, get this to the table, I'm sure to do that. And this is a really, again, fun, whimsical theme about feeding humans to demons and various other creatures. I mean, what more can you ask for during October? So that is Japan-made games Demon Worker. Number 2 on this list is a game that is definitely appropriate for this season. However, in my heart, there is no time that this game is not welcome to my table, and that is Ghost Stories from designer Antoine Balza. Ghost Stories is a cooperative game where you are going to be playing as monks defending the city from oncoming hordes of ghosts, ghouls, demons, goblins, and spirits. In order to do so, you're going to be collecting different talismans, which will help you perform exorcisms to banish these evil spirits and protect the village. This is one of the most gorgeously punishing games that I own in my collection, and it is, I love it. It's so amazing. It's very challenging, and I've advocated for this game before. There are a lot of people who say it is too random, it's all luck and die rolls, it's too challenging, but really, if you get into it and give it a couple plays and start to look past, well, how can I mitigate those die rolls? It's not a traditional game where you get modifiers and you can change the dice. There are other things you need to do to prepare in order to be able to accommodate for luck of die rolls throughout the entire course of the game. And it's such a satisfyingly crunchy game once you really get into it. And again, the overall aesthetic is so alluring. This is a game that, especially with the expansion White Moon, really draws me in thematically, makes me feel like I'm there in the moment. The adrenaline is high. I recently taught this game to a friend of mine who had been bragging about it for over 3 years. He finally found a copy. We sat down, we played it. It was one of the most invigorating board gaming experiences that I've had since I don't even know how long. Just again, the adrenaline of each die roll, the popping up of which monster, which spirit comes up next. There's so much tension and juiciness, and oh, it's just so good. Like, and yes, it's hard, and yes, it's difficult, but that's part of the draw for me. And you can certainly find ways to mitigate that if you want a little lighter experience. You solo gamers out there, not gonna lie, you know I love this game solo. I'll play all 4 monks by myself. I don't even care. It's that good. So if you were looking for a game that is punishing yet rewarding and immersed and drenched in this spooky atmosphere and theme, be sure to check out Ghost Stories from Antoine Bauza. And last but not least on this list is another game that mechanically is just so tight, so punishing, so crunchy, and is dripping in beautiful, gory theme. My number 1 pick for this list is Nicholas Roberts' The Bloody Inn. The Bloody Inn is a card game where you are going to lure in guests into your murder hotel and, as you may have guessed, murder them. Over the course of the game, you'll be utilizing cards to either bribe guests out of their rooms, to create buildings out of them, and or to end them and score them for points by stealing the money right out of their pockets. Weberson Santiago's art in this game is so hauntingly beautiful, and it's a very gory theme. It could have gone real raunchy real quick or real campy, but they really kept it classy here by hiring him to do the art for this game. And speaking of class, the implementation of multi-use cards in this game is, for me, a gold standard in the industry. How the cards work together, how you can build an engine by using them to be buildings. Do you want to use those cards for their symbols on top? Do you want to use those cards to kill them? Like, you can't do both, right? You can only either get them into your hand for certain actions or take them straight out of the hotel for others. There are so many amazing decisions in this game. There's a long version, a short version. Both are really great length, but based on your particular playstyle or how much time you have, you can definitely modify the game, and it works well in both scenarios. This is a proper gamer's game. There are so many elements within this game that not only work mechanically, that are super engaging, but that work really well with the theme and create an overall very dark and haunting experience. So if you haven't already, this is a game that even if you don't get to it during the spooky season, be sure to check out The Bloody Inn. So there you have it. There are my top 10 spooky games for the Halloween season. We've got some really crunchy, deep games. We've got some really light, whimsical, fun times. Overall, hopefully there's something for everybody on this list and you found at least one new game to look into. Be sure to leave down in the comments below the spooky games that you would recommend, both for me to check out and anybody else watching this video. And as always, please be sure to give the video a like, and you can subscribe down below as well if you haven't already. It really does help out the channel. It's a quick, small, free thing that you can do to help get these games out to a wider audience. So thank you as always for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye. Welcome and welcome back, everybody. Why do I sound like a chain smoker?